Hi everyone, and as you see behind my back, this is the church, part of the Alexander compound. It's part of it is the Alexander Nevsky Church in Jerusalem, just around the corner from the Holy Sepulchre Church. It's probably you can see it better from here without me getting in your way. Hi everyone. Hi. And but before we explore the church itself, I would like to give you a quick introduction about how, in general, I would say Christian pilgrimage resumed after, I would say, about 6 centuries break in a nutshell after the Crusaders, and how was the partnership, how the business, because it was business, because in order for the Christian institutions uh, to be able to open in the region. They needed to, well, it was business, it was money for the Ottoman Empire. So we're going to talk about that as well. And before we begin, hi everyone. Before we begin, I would like to let you know about my schedule for tomorrow and also the entire week. So here it is. Three tours are scheduled for tomorrow. As you might have noticed, I haven't done and not going to be doing any live walks in Tbilisi because the protests are still on and there's no end to it. Like today was blocked one big road, actually exactly to the area where we live. So I'm happy I wasn't in the city. So we'll see how it goes next time, but I have scheduled one live walk for Tbilisi for the next weekend because, live tours are my most favorite. Sometimes life gets in the way, and I decided to keep on the safe side. So, as I said, I will be starting with a short introduction about how things were, just to make sure we're all updated on the situation. And first and foremost, especially those of you who haven't done many of my tours on the Holy Land, or for those who are going to be watching it as a recording on my YouTube channel, that I expect, I will be using some trigger words. So I need to set things straight just before we begin. So I will be referring quite, and please bear with me for those who know, I will be referring quite a lot. I will be using quite a lot the word Palestine. But when I say Palestine, I mean I refer to the region, to the situation way before the state of Israel would be established, to the story way before the 1990s. So it doesn't refer to the modern day Palestine issue. It refers to the region called Palestine, the name to which was given in the second century Common Era, when Emperor Hadrian, after uh, oppressing the Jewish revolt against the Romans, destroyed Jerusalem and rebuilt it into a pagan city, having called it Aelia Capitolina and having renamed the entire Judea region into Syria Palestina in order to erase any memory of Jews and Judea from the face of the earth and the heads and minds of the people. So, Palestina refers to the ancient pagan people who, well, according to the most recent DNA analysis, came to the Canaan approximately the same time the Israelites returned from the slavery from Egypt. And the Philistines came from around the region of, let's say, Greece, maybe south of Spain, around that area, so the Mediterranean basin anyway. So this is just to set things straight, and I will be referring to the events that were taking place, starting for, well, let's say 19th century, mid 19th century, and up until 1917, starting from 1517, the land, the Holy Land, including the vast territory around the modern day territory of Israel, was under control of the Ottoman Empire. And the Ottoman Empire was vast. And it would be just referring to different regions within itself. And Palestine would be that exact region. So I hope the context is clear and we're not going to just to get back to this. Questions are welcome in the end of the tour. Luckily, this is my last tour for tonight, so I will have time to elaborate have if you have a wish to discuss or whatever. So, the very first um, Christian missions after, let's say, the Crusader period, and as you know, the Crusaders were uh, really badly defeated. Uh, I would say like completely and finally in the end of the 1200s or the 13th century by the Ayyubids, the Salahuddin, and by the Mamluks. So, and that was to put an end to Christian, I would say to a large Christian presence whatsoever up until mid 19th century. However, it wasn't exactly like that, and it wasn't a vacuum. So some Franciscans managed to purchase some land quietly from the Ottomans in the 1700s, but very little. And in the 19th century, when the Ottoman Empire had already been kind of fallen apart, there were some attempts from different Christian denominations to purchase some land here and there to, some pilgrimage in very small numbers would be allowed. And this is also the same time, 1847, when the Russian Orthodox ecclesiastical mission first managed to come to Jerusalem. 1847, this is shortly before the Crimean War, which is very important for us. And Porphyrios Stensky, we could say he was kind of a priest. Yeah, so we can say that he was the head of this ecclesiastical mission. But when he came with a short visit and the very small group of pilgrims, there was no infrastructure, there was nothing. The wilderness, very dangerous road because Jerusalem doesn't have any sea, so they had to dock at the port of Jaffa, and then several days, up to 4 days, the trip could take them from Jaffa, which is modern day Tel Aviv, to Jerusalem. So those people were not prepared for the climate. They were not prepared for the food. They were not prepared for the heat. So there was nothing. There was no infrastructure, and there was also there was danger. On the road, there was no road. It was just the wilderness through some forest. Uh, and that was it. So lots of pilgrims fell ill. Well, there were very few of them, just several hundred. So that was, I would say, a very bad start. But ever since that, so the information started to come to the Romanovs. At that time, it was still the emperor. Let's put it like that, Nicholas I. And yes, he realized that there was an importance and necessity for Russian presence in Jerusalem and Russian Orthodox Church, but it was very difficult, and the Ottomans were not really willing to cooperate whatsoever. And things changed after the Crimean War because for the Ottomans, in order to win, and they uh, um, they need support of Europe, they needed support of England and France, and eventually the Ottomans were not defeated, and it's really hard to tell whether the Russian Empire actually won or what the Ottomans won, most probably the Ottomans. But anyway, the Ottomans needed to pay quite a high price, and for the support of Europe, and Europe knew exactly what how the Ottomans could pay back. The Ottomans allowed pilgrimage. The Ottomans allowed massive purchase of land by not only by the way, Christian institutions and denominations, but also the first waves of Jewish immigration also slowly but started to come to the Holy Land. When it gets to Russia, so they obviously after the Crimean War, when the news reached Russia about the quite, well, I would say gradual, but definitely ongoing and ever-growing expansion of the Catholics and later on Protestants to the Holy Land. Obviously, the Russian Orthodox Church wanted to be there. So eventually, in the end of the 1850s, there was achieved permission from the Ottomans for the Russian church to, well, they purchased the first plot of land and they started building the Russian compound. It took them 4 years to be, actually, they purchased quite a big territory. And as you can see from here, this is the old city of Jerusalem. Teeny tiny, 1 square kilometer in area. And it's still like this. I mean, the old city hasn't really changed its walls ever since the Suleiman the Magnificent who rebuilt them in the first half of the 1500s, 1530s. So, but the Russian compound, please don't think this is the Russian compound. This is not the case, and this is the, I'm sure you understand. So this is the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock, right over here. And this is the Russian compound. And you can see this is almost wilderness all around Jerusalem. Back in the days, nobody really wanted to live outside of Jerusalem walls because it was not safe. That's the thing. But clearly there was no space inside the city. And well, I'm sure you remember the Mishkenot Sha'ananim, the first Jewish neighborhood outside of the Jerusalem wall. Yeah, so it's also the 1860s. And Russians were the pioneers when it got to Christianity to build outside of the walls of the city. However, the tour tonight will be done within the old city. We are in the heart of the old city, but I promise to give you kind of a background before that. And it's quite likely we won't be able to see the entire church tonight, but don't worry, there is a second episode and there is a lot more to share for the next tour as well. So the Russian compound was built in 4 years. They managed to build, I would say, the basic I would say, infrastructure for the pilgrims. And there was invited the architect, Martin Eppinger, who was actually German. He came with a mission. They were actually two brothers. And this is the photo of the first mission. Obviously, they were representatives of Russian aristocracy who contributed a lot financially to the establishing to the collection of money as well, but the entire country contributed from every church and every. I'm not exaggerating. Every church in every city, in every village, would be doing this kind of a, kind of a chipping in. Yeah, everyone chipped in, every church, and eventually there was collected loads of money, and the biggest investment, the biggest donations would come. I say investment because it, in a way, it is an investment, but the biggest donation came from the Romanovs for sure, from their private pockets, I would say. So there was built the Russian compound, there was built the Russian Trinity Church. These are just the illustrations of how they thought this would look, and actually they succeeded quite a lot. I would say that the area probably looked a bit more greener, and it's definitely greener now, but there were times with a lot less rain all around. And for those of you who are familiar with Jerusalem, you may actually recognize the buildings because all of them are still there. And both buildings are still there. So this is the Holy Trinity Cathedral, which we are going to see in one of the following episodes. But this time I wanted to be as close as possible to the old city. So since this is the outside of the old city, we'll get to this definitely in one of the next episodes. And obviously the churches were built in a Russian way. You wouldn't really see in this church you wouldn't really see the onion-shaped domes, but you would see the Byzantine architecture with a basilica type of church with a nave, with the apse, and that's exactly that was the ideal architectural design solution, because that's how the churches would look in early Christian period, so in Byzantine times. Just some of the photos of me taken in the Trinity Cathedral. I have tons of photographs, like thousands of photographs and some videos filmed on different days, different dates, and I will be putting them together. And also for me, this type of tours are very important because working on this course, which I started way before in summer 2023, it was a way to fight a homesickness. So This is the first Russian compound, by the way, and the area is still called the Russian compound. And but now, well, this building used to be a hospital, used to be a police office, and uh, well, luckily, okay, not luckily, but I will explain that most of these buildings they will be constructed a lot more. We will be talking about it. But starting from the Khrushchev period, these buildings would not really belong to the Soviet Union, and things started to change. But politically, it's like it's a bit contentious. But we'll get to that. So within the Russian compound, for the ecclesiastical mission, not just for every pilgrim, there was with the Church of Saint Martyr Alexandra, and there are photographs left, but the church looks just the same. But I haven't been there. The church is still there. I haven't visited it. I believe it is available for visits, within pilgrim groups. Later on, there was built another compound called Mariinsky compound. And well, you can see this was for pilgrims. This was probably for some of the poorest of the pilgrims that ever made their way, that ever set their feet in the Holy Land, the Mariinsky compound. There was Antonin Kapustin, well, the priest and the head of the second mission, MUC 1865, 1894, and those were the most active years for the Russian pilgrimage. During that period, he oversaw the construction of many pilgrimage sites, many monasteries, such as the one in Ein Kerem, not far from Jerusalem, and Gordon's monastery. Believed it, well, we will be visiting because this is believed this is the place where the Mary was visited by Elizabeth and where John the Baptist was born. And the church is built the place where it is believed that John the Baptist was born. And we're going to visit it. So that's why, as I said, there is archaeology behind some of the, well, underneath, not behind, but underneath some of those sites. So the convent is still there, by the way, and this is the photo with some of the nuns. The convent is still there. Russian convent on the Mount of Olives, the convent of the Ascension on the Mount of Olives. It is still there, and it's a very different architecture. All of a sudden, neo-Gothic style, quite spectacular. My absolute favorite is the Church of Mary Magdalene, 1885. This is when exactly 4 years later after the assassination to Alexander II, well, in St. Petersburg, this is exactly when his son, Alexander III, stepped in and he tightened the screws. And his idea would be uh, to bring back old patriotic, I would say Slavic values with no really chauvinism and I would say Nazism on that side. However, he was an anti-Semite, but it wasn't like that extreme, but he was an anti-Semite. So this is when the rise to the neo-Russian style was given, and hence the church built in 1895 in the heyday of Alexander III, this church was constructed in neo-Russian style. So, and this is really one of my favorite churches. It's also because one of the Romanovs is buried there, Elisaveta Fedorovna. We are going to visit the church. It's not so easy to visit it. It only works a few hours a day and not every day. Other than that, it needs to be arranged and it has to be a pilgrimage visit or something. So yeah, that was quite challenging. So we will get to that. This is just kind of to give you a few ideas. These are the photographs, some pilgrims coming on the Mount of Olives. And eventually, shortly before the Mary Magdalene Church was finished, there was established officially, well, finally, the big community, so the foundation of the Russian Orthodox Palestine Society. And Vasily Khitrovov, aristocrat, was in charge Obviously, he was given the total support and trust from the Romanovs. So there was a uncle to Nicholas II, Grand Duke Sergei Alexandrovich, and his wife Yelisaveta, who is the elder sister to Alexandra Fedorovna, future wife of Nicholas II, and well, Grand Duchess. After Sergei Alexandrovich was murdered by a terrorist in Moscow, she became a nun. She pardoned, she forgave, not the pardon, she forgave the one who killed her husband. She never really repented, and but she became a nun after that. And the rest of her life, she devoted herself to the support of the pilgrims. In the First World War, she uh, took care of the wounded, the poor, the orphans, and so she's buried in the Mary Magdalene Church, which was an interesting story on itself. So Imperial Orthodox Palestine Society, that's the official name, and this is when one of the most beautiful buildings to my mind was constructed. The mission of Saint Sergius in Jerusalem, named after Sergei Alexandrovich, the which you already know why, and the building is still there. And this is one of the few buildings that had been returned to Russia after the Soviet times, and yeah, Vladimir Putin, uh, personally I would say, oversaw the return of the site to the Russian church. So what happened in the Soviet period? Obviously, the Soviet Union couldn't care less about preservation of any Christian site, but it needed money. But more than the money, the Soviet Union needed oranges. So there was this, they managed to strike that orange deal. That's the name. It's the official name, the orange deal. Um, so according to that deal, Russia gave away all the former Christian sites to the state of Israel, and instead, Israel would deliver thousands of tons of oranges to the Soviet Union. That's the story. So that's the orange deal in a nutshell. I just love that story. So Sergeyevskaya Podvorye in Russian is a beautiful place. I loved it there. It still looks amazing, restored, and it's very close to the old city, very close. So we will be visiting it. We'll walk in the courtyards, and it's just a lovely place to be, regardless of the politics. And yes, it has a fountain, which was a savior, to be honest. There are lots of photographs, and you can see that well, as the activity developed, as I would say, not always was it easy to negotiate deals, to negotiate the rules of, with the Ottomans, but eventually they started building pilgrimage sites for different kinds of pilgrims. And in Sergeyevskaya Podvorye, you probably can notice this canteen, right? And also you can see this room. So obviously there were also rooms for like um, 5-star hotel rooms for the pilgrims who could afford that. There was also a plan to build uh, a luxurious place for aristocrats, but eventually they decided to go with one for everyone, just kind of a VIP entrance. I managed to find some information, from the archives. So this is the Saint Alexander Mission of Jerusalem. That's exactly the place we are going to be visiting tonight. And in order to start building in the old city, which wasn't easy to negotiate, but they managed, and Alexander III, the Russian emperor himself, participated in the negotiation process with the Ottomans. Eventually, the Ottomans allowed the purchase, and the Russians purchased the land just behind the Holy Sepulchre Church, like around the corner. I mean it. I will show you in the end. So in order to build, they started digging. First of all, they started digging. because they were looking for some archaeology, they were hoping for some archaeology, and like, come on, you were building next to the Holy Sepulchre, the most important of all churches in the world, Christian churches, I mean. So obviously you want to do some digging, and you are destined to find something, and they actually found. We will talk about it. And by the way, this is Conrad Schick. For those familiar with history of Jerusalem, you know this name. He is actually originally a German watchmaker, but also an engineer, archaeologist, historian, and architect who contributed to the construction of Jerusalem greatly, development of Jerusalem. And there is a museum, the House of Conrad Schick. Very interesting story. So eventually, well, we will talk about what they found when we start talking about it, but they found something quite spectacular over there, above which eventually the church would be constructed. The Alexander Nevsky Cathedral would be constructed. A few more sites which don't belong to Russia anymore. Benjamin Gard in Jerusalem, and Benjamin Gard was constructed. Um, there was a monk, he was a priest, and Benjamin, who wanted to build the site not for pilgrims but for ladies, for elderly ladies who wanted to finish their days, who wanted to live till the end in Jerusalem, to stay there forever. And that's how it started. And you see the photographs, all the ladies who chose to stay in the Holy Land forever and to be buried there. So that's exactly what the Benjamin yard was for. And also Nicholas Yard, named after Nicholas II. It's already early 1900s, and well, you may have seen the Nicholas's Yard because this is one of the buildings that was bombed heavily. There was an explosion. That's the story from the Mandate period, so we're not getting into this. Anyway, so now let's talk about the Alexander Nevsky Church in the heart of the old city. The Holy Sepulchre is just a little bit to the left, so trust me, we are very close. As I said, actually, this is a monastery. There's also a place for the pilgrims to stay, and the church is open for visits, and it's open, and it actually has great interest among all Christian groups. Alexander Nevsky Church. Let's read what is written over there. But I was told multiple times not to read the explications because more often than not there's all lies that they are that they have written there. So it says Russian Church in memory of Tsar Alexander III. The Alexander Nevsky Cathedral is consecrated to a saint from the 12th century, who is also, by the way, one of the patron saints of St. Petersburg. But the choice of a name of a saint is not just out of the blue. That in fact to commemorate the death of Emperor Alexander III. And it also says that there was the threshold to the judgment gate in the church. That's what they believed, that they found back then with Conrad Schick in charge, and also the archaeological remains from the Roman and Byzantine period. So let's see if it is like this. So this is the entrance. So upstairs there are the rooms for the nuns and also for the pilgrims. But the church can be visited by anyone. Also, there are some souvenirs to purchase. But again, as I said, the church is curious for just regardless of the denomination. So this is the gate, the threshold of the gate of judgment, according to Conrad Schick. That's Conrad Schick himself, by the way. And so the question is whether it is exactly the gate of judgment. So what is the gate of judgment? The gate of judgment is so when Jesus was on his way to the crucifixion, he needed to be taken outside of the city because there were no executions done within the city, outside of the city. And it is believed that Jesus left the old city through some gates, and They are called the gates of judgment, but nobody actually knows where exactly those gates were. We know of some gates, but we're not sure about some of the gates from that period, because, as you know, there are walls now, but as I said, the modern walls, 1500, the walls that Jesus walked looked very different, and we managed to find some of them when we did the tours on the Via Dolorosa. And then, as you know, the city was destroyed completely in 135 Common Era and rebuilt again. And for some time, it didn't even have walls. So we don't know exactly the archaeology of those days. To most scholars nowadays, it doesn't really look like the gates of the old city because, okay, one column, okay, to the left, that's quite possible, but to the right, it looked more like a construction, like a building. So, and there is no way to actually tell whether it is the gate of judgment or not. Why they believe this is the gate of judgment? Because the Holy Sepulchre Church, which is believed to have been built on the spot where Jesus was crucified, this is too tempting to tell us. Well, it's too tempting. It's too tempting because, and by the way, yes, there's also this in the crypt. There is a small chapel, and this is the icons of the holy martyrs of the family of Nicholas II. As you know, they are saints now. They're, well, the martyrs because they died a martyr death. And so the question is whether it is the gate of faith, which is possible, but you can see that nah, this doesn't look like there should be a wall there, but there is no wall here, right? So it doesn't really look like the gate. The city gates had to be fortified. They were not supposed to be welcoming. They're supposed to be protected. So it does look a bit more welcoming to me. And also here you can see a model. So I thought you might want to know what it is. In 1860s, so way before even this church was finished, the Russians participated voluntarily in the restoration of the dome of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and that was the model on which they worked, which, well, that served them for the purpose of preparation for the restoration of the dome. But that was like, 1860s. So what we see inside the church, the archaeology doesn't really end here. And you see that the walls continue. You can see that. Yeah. So Jesus carrying the cross because they believe this is exactly where he left the premises of the old city. So this is exactly the way of Jesus to Golgotha. And there is another wall. And yes, these walls, however, look very much Herodian walls. Exactly, because Satyam, thank you so much for the coffee. Thank you. And you see these big rocks. So the same very regular rectangular rocks can be seen now in the Western Wall, which is believed to be the wall that survived from, and it's proved that this is the wall that survived the wall of the Temple Mount that was built during Herod times, and it survived. So yeah, again, this is really, really tempting. The church also has its own Golgotha. This is believed to be already outside of the walls of the city. So this is the small Golgotha that the church has for itself. Because yes, this is the part of the bedrock, and they just arranged it. So this is the bedrock. This this could be this could be the Golgotha. This could be the site where Jesus was crucified. Why not? It's not like they argue with the Holy Sepulchre. No, they don't. But they thought because, well, since it's outside of the city, it's the same bedrock, so why not putting another crucifixion here? Actually, when the Alexander mission was being constructed, the Russians from the very beginning knew they would want to build a church there. But it was quite contentious because they were building just really next to the Holy Sepulchre, and they thought that the Ottomans would not really be happy about it, as well as all the other denominations. So they tried to hide it. They tried, but it was quite obvious. So eventually, Nicholas II, which, as you already understand, is a bit different period. So eventually they coordinated everything only in 1890s, and yeah, officially the church was consecrated, and yeah, so the presence of the church was allowed there. But that was not easy, not easy. So now, what is this and what is there? Like, that's a good question. There's one theory. It's not my theory. It goes back to actually what's written in Matthew. So again, I tell you, it's easier for a camel. So this Jesus would say that again. I tell you, it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for someone who is rich to enter the kingdom of God. Maybe. So which, well, okay, this is an allegory. Okay, we understand that, but maybe actually Jesus was also referring to the entrance to the old city, because the gates of the city would close for the nighttime. Again, the gates were not to welcome; the gates were to protect, and the walls were to protect. And it's clear that there is the edge of something here. So who knows? And it's a big question, so we are not sure. But maybe this was the small gate that was left to people, well, those who came late, those who came, and well, if they came, the doors would be closed, the gates would be closed. So actually, we tried with my group mates. One can pass through that eye of the needle. So maybe there was the eye of the needle that Jesus also referred to. We don't know. We know that Jesus had to spend the night before, well, had to spend the night outside of the old city, and we will be visiting the Church of the Agony, the Gethsemane. We will be doing that. So who knows? That's a question. But well, that's, I would say, really interesting, because that hole didn't just appear from nowhere, and it's clear that it had been there ever since. Who knows? Again, very very regular Herodian type of stones, and the bedrock over there. So you see the bedrock gets protected because this is the same bedrock. This is the same bedrock which you will see in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Not on this tour, but yeah, it's there, and you may remember it from my tours on the Via Dolorosa. Then there's also this building. There's no light there. I mean, when I was there one day, it was, I would say, it was really a mess. And then on the other day, it was a bit cleaner. Actually, this is the street. This is the part of the street, and it is unanimously recognized as part of the Cardo Maximus, which is the main road in every Roman city. So when um, in every Roman city were built according to a certain system, and there would be normally two main roads, Cardo running from south to north, north-south, and Decumanus east-west. So this is believed to be part of the Cardo Maximus, so the main street that stretches all through the old city of Jerusalem. And this is the street. Um, there's also some bells over there, and the column. The question is where the column is from. Was it marking? Was it marking the street? Was it marking the shop? Because all along the street there would be shops. It's quite possible. No really big explanation here. So you think that this was not really cut out by converged shapes. Those are old stones, and that was clearly done long time ago. I mean, that's the eye of the needle. On the walls, you must have noticed already lots of plaques with different names. Those are the names of different donors, um, uh, different aristocrats, the Grand Dukes Romanovs that donated the money, and everyone also those who managed to visit the church, because not everyone managed to visit, but most of them did. And you see those plaques over there on the wall. It's written here. Normally they would be always um, just behind the crucifixion, there would be standing the nuns, and they would be well over there. I mean, behind us, before the crucifixion, behind us, there would be standing the nuns, and there would be a prayer held 24/7, day and night. Day and night, the nuns would be praying. They would be just doing it in shift, so 24/7. These are the Romanovs mission visiting the church, the consecration of the church eventually. And yet there's nothing on the walls, there's nothing. So the church was just finished. By the way, Nicholas II was not present, did not visit the Holy Land as an emperor, but he visited the Holy Land when he was a grand duke on his grand tour around the world. As you know, he also visited Egypt, well, many countries, Japan, all over. So he also visited the Holy Land, but that was way before he would become a monarch himself. And well, the modern building is over here. Well, not the modern, the slightly more modern section, the iconostasis. So behind the iconostasis, behind the icon stand is on the opposite end, there is exactly that illustration of Jesus carrying the cross. The icons, Saint Prince Alexander Nevsky to the right, and the Dark Gate. It's rather small iconostasis normally. Well, there's not really a rule how many rows of icons there should be. More than one, but there could be 5, 4 tiers of icons. That's not the case. And also, you might have noticed already lots of icons on the walls, and also some paintings all around the perimeter of the room. Those are donations. Those are gifts from all over, from pilgrims, from aristocrats, uh, as usual. And these banners would be used for the marching by the pilgrims. They were used in the 19th century. They're not used anymore, so they are part of the museum. That's we will be in the next tour. We will be visiting the museum of the museum of the church, and over there, by the way, this is a very interesting story. You you don't see an icon here because the icon is not there. It was taken away from, it was taken from the frame. But due to, I believe this is due to weather conditions, it just printed on the glass. But the icon itself is not there. So it's kind of a miracle. So the icon is not there, but the place is venerated. And we will be, as I said, we will be visiting the museum of the church. And the museum, I wasn't allowed to film there, and I actually also wasn't allowed to film at the church. But I filmed, but very little, and also asked a colleague to help. But that's okay. It's not illegal, but it wasn't always easy. And you must have noticed already the paintings all around the perimeter of the building. They were painted by a professional artist, Nikolai Koshinev. Um, and it's very hard to tell, but these paintings are about 2 meters height each, like 7 inches or so, I believe. So they're very big, and they're all painted on canvas, and they are painted in great detail to great attention to every detail, and the they tell the story of Jesus. Uh, oh, well, I would say they start on the opposite wall, and all the details of the last day of Jesus, of his last hours up until the resurrection, are on the wall. We will talk more about them on the next tour. We will be talking about some of them, not all of them. That's impossible. Also, the crosses. They're also the nations, and there is one tradition that you must have seen, must have noticed in the churches, in Orthodox churches, that Russians, when well, not just Russians, but I would say Orthodox in general, Russian Orthodox, they would cross, they would kiss icons, press the forehead, and so after COVID, so that got a bit more problematic, and normally there would be nuns that that are standing and wiping everything on a regular basis. And these icons are put on the table over there. Obviously, you cannot touch the icons on the walls, but you can pray to them. So those are, I would say, most precious icons that are on the walls. They are quite expensive. I don't know the price, but they are also the gift from the pilgrims and the from the donors. Obviously, the church. So the church belongs to the Russian mission. So the Russian mission in the Holy Land. It's this church was featured on many on different news channels. There was a there was a kind of a quiet battle, and in order to settle everything, Vladimir Putin actually had to come, and he visited Jerusalem. I think it was the end of the 1990s, maybe early 2000s. He visited, and well, after that, I guess they agreed with Netanyahu on everything. So, and after that part, some of the former buildings that belonged to the Russian Empire were returned to Russia. Um, so before we leave, again, as I said, there is a small museum which we will visit next time, as well as next time we will be discussing the works by Koshelov, some of them. And there is a small room. Um, it, it's also the part of the museum, and there are different portraits. The portraits of the Anton Kapustin, by the way, who was the head of the second mission, who spent his half of his life in Jerusalem. There are portraits of the Grand Dukes Romanovs that contributed, donated a lot of money and contributed to the existence of the imperial Orthodox society. Portrait of Nicholas II, portrait of his wife, portrait of Yelizaveta and Sergei Alexandrovich. This is Alexandra Fedorovna. This is Grand Duke Sergei Alexandrovich, and sorry, that was Alexandra Fedorovna. There was the Grand Duke Sergei Alexandrovich and his wife. This is Alexander III and Maria Fedorovna, parents to Nicholas II, and Alexander III, who is commemorated by this church. So Alexander III, Alexander Nevsky, so hence the choice of the saint after whom the church would be consecrated. And over there, the last thing on the wall, there is a painting by Ilya Repin, the artist about whom I have talked so much on various tours. We even visited his winter house, his house in not far from St. Petersburg. And Ilya Repin visited Jerusalem. He actually did a pilgrimage in the 1890s, if I'm not mistaken. And when in Jerusalem, he painted this Jesus carrying the cross. He was under so much impression from Jerusalem. He painted this, and he gave it as a present to the Russian mission. And this is the original, and the painting is there in Jerusalem, in the church. Some of the photographs. This was the room that where the Romanovs, the Grand Dukes, and the aristocrats would be having a rest, would be waiting while visiting the church. And just to prove the point that we are in the old city, and to see that we are really around the corner from the Holy Sepulchre, well, this is just to show you where we are. So this is the build to the right. This is still the building of the mission, and this is the entrance to the courtyard to the Holy Sepulchre Church, which we are not going to be visiting tonight. That so, and over there, there is a building, and the next one is exactly the Church of the Alexander Nevsky Church. So the links are there. My YouTube channel for the Lord and everyone to catch up on the tours you might have missed. So tomorrow, the tour on Jesus, also the tour on the Michael's Castle in St. Petersburg, and what else? Oh yeah, and also I'm taking it to Peterhof to see the imperial bathhouses and the house of Peter the Great, and some fountains in the gardens. And Nikolai Rimsky-Korsakov apartment on November 26th. Thank you so much, everyone, for your support. Thank you for your interest, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.